I'm here with Jermaine, and we are going to be talking about challenging the narrative. Okay, we're talking about having these difficult conversations. These are conversations a lot of people think inside, but they don't want to say it out loud because they don't want to appear to be against what everybody else is saying. Okay. And I said, we have to have these difficult conversations and make people face the truth. Once we give them the information, they do what they want to with it, right?
It's a great time. It's great. I think it's a much needed conversation because, as you say in the beginning, there's so much going on in the world. If we're not careful, we're just downloading what everybody else is putting on, right? And we're not really thinking about what do we really need to do that is important. Instead, we just go along with the narrative, the conversation of what's going on in the world. And I think we all fall prey to that. So how would you like to start today? Where would you like to start?
Actually, we already started when we pressed the connect button. Okay, so uh, so why don't we start off with just introducing ourselves? Okay, I'm Margaret Williams from the Empowered Leader publication. I help marginalized leaders uh, increase their visibility, impact, and from there we can reach our desired outcomes. Okay. Here today, I am with Jermaine, and I would love for you to introduce yourself, tell them about your publication, and what brought you to Substack. Hi, Kathleen. Hi, Joe. Thank you for joining us.
So, hey everybody, my name is Jermaine. I am the founder of an app called HeirLight. HeirLight was created because I realized that my mom had a insecurity around retirement. And what I realized from it is that it wasn't because that she didn't have enough, it was more because she didn't know what she had at the time. And so I built an app to talk to her, to try to organize her information and all the things and people in her life. And what I realized when I had those information is that I'm able to create a will for her. And so we turned this into a product. That's what I'm building. I started coming onto Substack and doing podcasts because I wanted to just remind people to have these conversations. As we're going through our days, we're so busy. We're dealing with everything that is urgent, but we sometimes forget to do what is important. I think for my mom, that important thing was to find out where she was, and that can inform where she wants to go, what is enough in her life, and all these things. And so that's where HeirLight started. And that's I've been a founder multiple times. I'm in Arizona today, actually meeting with lawyers because for our app to be legally valid in all these states, I gotta make sure that the lawyers sign off on it. And so that's what I'm up to today. But I normally live in Los Angeles. I think that's me in a nutshell.
You're cute. You know what I'm saying? You're cute. You're charismatic. And looking at you, you wouldn't think that you have been this CEO, this developer, this creator. And people underestimate us until you get to start talking to us, and it's like, oh, it's more to you than I thought. Okay, so we can't take. We can't make assumptions about people, and we all do make assumptions about people based on the color of their skin or how they appear to be on the outside. See, we need to take a step back and like, okay, let me talk to this young man and see what he's about, and talk to us more about this app and when it's going to be available, for everybody.
Yeah, so the app is already out in California. We're out in the Apple Store and the Google Store. We're talking to lawyers in Texas, Florida, New York, Massachusetts, Ohio, and Illinois right now. And once they sign off on it, we'll be everywhere. We're going to try to reach as many people as possible. The idea really came from the fact that all the tools out there that are available, still 70% of Americans avoid this conversation about having a will. And so something has to change, right? And so the thought was with AI, we're able to have conversations easier, but AI is not drafting this document that we have. Yeah, so we come from a place of maybe a little bit more human conversation. instead of like a legal tool. At least that's the goal of what we're building. But yeah, I'm super excited about this app. I have some users, they're using it, they're telling me, I used to think that estate planning was a social economic thing where like people with money have estate plans and people who don't. But then I have users who are 58 years old and they have money, based on their profession, and they still use my app. And the insight that I got from them is that people don't want to talk to another human about this thing, and it's highly personal. It's like, just because you know what is right doesn't mean you're going to do it, and this is why a lot of people put it off. And so our goal is that we hope that this app that we have gives you a very easy step to go from 0 to 1. Right? You don't know where to start. You want to poke around and ask some questions about, what's an executor, or what's a guardianship, what happens to my pet if I can't come home tomorrow. There's all these little things that maybe we don't want to think about, especially not with another human. We can do it through an app right now.
Okay, let me ask you something. Joe is asking, does it include advanced directives?
It sure does. The only thing we're not building on right now is a trust. I'm going to charge my phone to make sure I don't run out. Yeah, the only thing we're not building right now is a trust. So for those of you listening who don't know the difference between a will and a trust, this is for entertainment, education purpose. It's not legal advice. Essentially, a will is a document that tells the legal system who you want to have your stuff. And a trust is kind of a container of all your things, right? I'm putting all my stuff in this truck. Maybe truck's not a good example, in this entity. And this entity will be inherited by the people that I want to give to. So the reason why we're not doing a trust is because if you have a trust, we can create a trust for you, but we can't force you to fund the trust. We can't tell you, to go to your bank and move the deed of your property and all these things. And so we didn't want to tackle all of that. We want to leave that to the lawyers. We want to just get people from 0 to 1. Just the first step. Let's just start the conversation.
I love this because in the African American community, we don't like to talk about death, much less deal with it. So with a system like this in place, you can do this while you're still in your right mind, because we know a lot of people get Alzheimer's, dementia, and other things, cancer and things like that. And you want to take care of these issues while you're still in your right mind and in good health, okay? And then the other thing comes in is, what about the family? They come back and say, "Oh no, this is not legitimate," because sometimes family is all for you when you're alive, maybe not. But once you're dead, everybody is fighting over who gets what. I forgot the name of that famous show that they had on TV. I used to watch it. It's like 4 or 5 seasons of it. And then
Succession.
Succession, exactly. That
Yep.
shit is real. That shit is real, for real. People be fighting over the money. No, he wanted me to have it. No, it's mine. And so how do you deal with the legalities of all of this crap?
Yeah, where we're starting is really even before all of that. I just published a article today on Substack about the few movies you can watch that explores this theme. Because what I realized, I watched this show with my girlfriend a few days ago called Eternity. It's on Apple TV. And it's basically, this woman who got to the end of her life and she went to this government looking building. And the people there were asking her, "Hey, where would you like to spend your eternity?" And, without ruining the movie, she had a husband who died at war, and a husband that she ended up spending 60 years of her life with. And she had to like grapple with the questions of, what kind of eternity do I want to have? And, from that movie, I thought, maybe a movie is a great way for us to start this conversation. Maybe instead of forcing our family to talk about these things, we can have them watch a movie together. And so if you go look at my Substack, I just published it today, from the insight that I had watching this movie. So it's pretty cool. It's a fun and easy way to talk about this. I'm very lucky. My parents and we talk about everything. So my mom, like, I know exactly what she wanted so my mom passed away 6 months ago.
I'm
So
sorry.
the timeline of the story is exactly a year ago in March of last year. I came home and I told my mom, "Hey, why don't we start thinking about your retirement?" And what I realized was that, yeah, she's just too nervous about retiring because she didn't want to run out of money before she died. And so I built this AI thing to talk to her. And this chatbot asked my mom, "Hey, who were you before you were a parent? What are some things you like to do? Where do you like to go? Like, is there a bucket list that you want to do that you haven't done yet?" And so with this AI, I got to know my mom a little bit better. But what really came out of it was just that all these conversations we don't talk to our loved ones about because we think we have more time, right? We think that, yeah, maybe next Christmas we'll do it. And it during COVID, I think a lot of people realize for this like fickleness of life, right? During COVID, we started hearing, people are dying here and there and all that. And I had a similar experience. I was living in New York during COVID. And I had always taken for granted if I want to see my parents, I fly from New York to LA. I get to hang out with them. I go back. But during COVID, it became a little harder, right? Because I didn't want to bring germs to them. I didn't want to risk my parents getting sick. So it was the first time that I couldn't just hop on a flight and go hang out with my parents. And it made me think, wow, some things that, we just have that we really don't challenge these. So one day I was back in LA in the summer of 2020, and we're just all working online. We're just sitting next to each other working. And I look around me and I thought, why can't I build a life around this? Right? Like the thing I care about the most are my parents, my siblings. I have three younger siblings. Why couldn't I design a life that, we're blessed enough to be working remotely? So why don't we just work remotely together? And so from that, we decided to just like work across from each other, have a co-working office space. You kind of see that I'm in a WeWork right now. It's the co-working space
Yeah.
here. And yeah, so we built this life together where I got to hang out with my parents all the time. And and out of this, I'm gonna keep going if you
Keep
wanna
going.
stop me. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
So last July, one thing I learned about my mom is that she had always wanted to go to this place in Salzburg because she loved this movie called The Sound of Music. Right. So she's born in 1963. So Sound of Music was just out at the time, and we knew she liked Sound of Music, but we didn't know how much she loved it. But because of these conversations, we thought, hey, why don't we just go to Salzburg? Like, what are we waiting for? We'll make the money, all right? We'll save up a little. We'll figure it out. So July of 2025, we went to Salzburg. We flew into Vienna. We did what we always do. We worked in the morning. We toured around at night, and then we did some emails so we get to extend our trip longer. We're not trying to optimize to go home quickly. And one of those weekends, we rented a car and drove to Salzburg from Vienna. As soon as we arrived, we walked around these churches that the main character, Maria, had got married in. We went to the convent that she had lived in. Went to this home, this mansion in front of the lakefront. If you watch a movie, you have this visual in your head right now, right? We're,
Yes.
we're thinking the rolling hills of Austria, with Julie Andrews singing. And at some point, my mom stopped and she looked at me and she said, this little girl who grew up in Malaysia, we're not talking big city, we're talking small town Malaysia. This little girl who watched that movie for the first time could not have imagined that one day she'd be standing at the same church that Maria got married at. And it just really hit me that, as I'm building HeirLight, I'm thinking about this legal stuff and everything. It's already done all its work for me, right? I've got to experience this thing with my parents, my mom, and got to help her and push her to live out her bucket list. And so that's where HeirLight started. HeirLight, the goal is to help people get more clarity, especially in relates to your loved ones, to have these conversations. The estate plan is kind of a bonus to me, but the estate plan is the tangible tool that we built. Um, about 8 days after we left Salzburg, my mom was hospitalized, and about a week after she passed.
Oh my
And
God.
if I kind of look back, and this is 6 months ago, so it's not too long ago from now. The way I look back at it is just I'm just so grateful. I'm just so grateful that we had that conversation, or collectively with AI and with me. So so that's kind of the longer origin story of HeirLight, and that is my mission now. That's all I'm doing for the most part. It's what I'm working on every day. I'm building it. Um, yeah, it's given me a very good founder story.
I love that. And I'm going to update the title of this live accordingly. Okay. Um, so I'm going to see if anybody else have any questions right quick before I continue. Kathleen, you have any questions? Because Kathleen was in a lot of us are in the helping profession. And this is one of the things that I'm concerned about, because my neighbor next door, okay, he passed away about maybe 4 months ago. Okay. He had
Mhm,
cancer. Fortunately, his wife was still living, and she was still volunteering at the hospital, okay, to keep herself, her mind and everything else moving. Because she said to me when I talked to her, I said, how do you keep yourself together? She's like, I go and help other people, you know? And that's how
mhm.
she keep her spirits high, and it gives her something to live for. And then now that her husband has passed away, when I see her sitting over there by herself, and I'm like, wow, she's living in that big, huge house alone. And I was talking to another neighbor yesterday, and she said, Wayne passed away. I said, no, he didn't. Another neighbor across the street, he passed away with pancreatic cancer. So she told me that the family is going to leave the house, I guess, open or vacant for a year, because they can't. They had him cremated and put him in a mausoleum. But I'm using these things because these people, and even myself, and the neighbor I talked to, we all live alone. Okay,
Mm.
we all live alone. So you just never know when that day comes. And if I wasn't involved with coaching and running this business, that things can play on your mind and things like that. And having be able to have conversations with people, it's really helped to with your mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Okay, so your tool can really actually go even further, because when I was a kid, I was born in '62. We had the Jetsons. They showed us what was possible back then. Okay, so people are afraid of AI. It's ludicrous, because look at the things that we can create and things that we can do to improve the quality of our lives as we get older. And even like you're young. Okay.
So I know I look super young. I'm 34. I'm just gonna put it out there. I am young, but I'm not in my early 20s anymore. Um, yeah, there's this chart that I stumbled upon during COVID, which shows us that by the time we're 20 years old, we would have spent 90% of the time we have with our parents. 20 years old, right? Of our entire lifetime. And by the time we're 30 years old, we would have already have spent 95% of all the time that we have in our lifetime with our parents. And that really got me thinking a lot about, gosh, what did I enjoy about that 95% so far? Right. And can I try to do a little bit more of that? Because otherwise we'd just be doing the same things in the last 5% that we have, which is not a lot. Because when you start introducing kids and getting older and getting sick and things like that, you don't have a lot in that 5%. And this is the entire thing that I'm trying to get the conversation going for, which is, let's not live life on autopilot. Let's kind of challenge it a little bit of like, yes, we got to take care of the bills, and uh, I'm gonna tell you something that's happening right now. So I'm in Phoenix today. In 3 days, I got to be in Las Vegas because I'm going to a trade show, and my girlfriend's here with me. She's out at a museum right now, and we're debating. We're debating. Can we squeeze in a Grand Canyon trip in between?
You sure?
Right? Because it's always, do you live fully? Do you work the necessities? How do you balance that, right? And in the past, I would just say, "Oh no, I gotta keep my head straight. I gotta just get to Vegas. Let's just drive there and get to work." But no, we're going to the Grand Canyon. So tomorrow after my next meeting, I'm just gonna try to go to Grand Canyon, take a detour, and then we're gonna end up in Las Vegas and do our work anyways. And so it's really got me thinking about these. How do we live a little bit more? And Joe, I see it in comments. My mom also, she was jumping around Austria with me, you know, 8 days before she was hospitalized. In fact, because I now have this awareness of the shortness, of the fickleness of life, I film everything. Um, and I have a video of my mom going up the escalator onto the plane, waving to me. It's like the last time I ever saw her,
Oh
right?
my
It's like the last time that I saw her alive because I saw her in a coma. But
That's an evergreen moment that you will always have. Okay. That's why I do these videos. Okay. That's the reason why. And I wanted to say to you this. When I went to the Grand Canyon, I paid for that helicopter ride. You have to do it to be able to see it from the sky. You got to do it. Okay. Yes.
yeah,
It's
I'm gonna
worth
check
your
it out.
chance.
Yeah, we're gonna be driving through. So
It's so beautiful, especially in the fall. Oh my
yeah,
God. It's breathtaking.
yeah. I've been a few times, and I know from the helicopter is nice, but it's also very expensive.
You only live once. That's why I did it, because I doubt if I'll go back there. So I did. It was worth the money. Trust and believe
Hmm.
it was worth the money.
Yeah,
Okay. So yes, Jill said last November she would have been grateful to have this too. That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm gonna change the name of the title of this live. Okay, and we're gonna make sure to put all the links in there, because this is an incredible tool. Okay. Because one of the things, as you get older too, one of the things we have to worry about is falling in the bathroom. That's the most, oh wow. And if you fall and hit your head and you by yourself, because most times your family, you had this huge family, but once you get old and you get the handicap and stuff like that, a lot of times family end up, we'll put you in a nursing home, or maybe just leave you where you at, and then just leave you by yourself, and you have to figure it out on your own. So having a tool like this is definitely good, because maybe you can put something on there like, "Hey, I'm having an emergency. Can you have call for the ambulance, because you might not be able to talk or anything." So it's a lot of add-ons. You know what? I saw this crazy movie once. I forgot what it was, but they sold this system, and they kind of like had you break down on purpose. And they said, "Oh, we got this program for you. It's only $399 a month, and this will solve your problem." Okay, once you signed up for the program, then they come back and say, "Oh, well, we forgot to tell you that you're gonna need an upgrade in the next 12 months. So we're gonna have to add another additional $199." They're like, "Well, no, I don't have the money." They say, "Well, I'm sorry. Well, you're gonna have to do it, because eventually your system gonna shut down completely." And I'm like, oh my God, they find a way to make you buy into these systems and stuff. So I forgot
mhm.
the name of it, but it was crazy.
Yeah. Can we talk about the fact that a lot of people live alone and age alone these days? So
Exactly.
I, I've learned this actually since I started doing podcasting and talking to folks who are in retirement, aging, grief, and things like that. I've learned that a lot of people are aging alone, and I come from a background, so I'm Asian American, if you can't tell. Um, oh yeah, Margaret, we got to talk about why I have a black name later. So, but
It's all good.
but I'm Asian American, right? And we live in generational households. Like we live with grandparents and parents and cousins and things like that. And I didn't realize that a lot of people now are aging alone. And it is is this American dream that we have, right? Like to have a white picket fence and to have your own space and to be not bothered by anybody. But so many studies out there have shown that the greatest indicator of happiness and life satisfaction is proximity to people that you care about, right? And I was asked recently, and I just came up with this answer, which is, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do, right? And not to say that I'm there, I'm definitely not there, but I thought I heard of this lady, Kirsten, I forgot her last name, who made a bunch of money and decided to, instead of move into a large gated community, she bought a apartment complex and then she rented out the units around there to her friends under the market rate, because she understood that if her kids grew up around other kids that also had the same upbringing or the same values and the proximity to this community, that her overall life quality would be higher. And on the opposite end of it is a lot of people make money and start distancing themselves, right? We isolate more when we get more. And I think that's something that we got to change the narrative on. I think it's about time that we start thinking about how do we live better in close proximity together.
You know what? That is indicative of an abundant and growth mindset. Okay? That's a return. That's a 100% return on your investment. Okay?
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
And if we all have all of these forward thinking capabilities, why not utilize it to figure out how we can do that, and we make the world a better place in the process of making ourselves happy. That is true happiness.
definitely.
Okay, so just like, for example, like Jimmy Carter, he had created Habitat for Humanity, helping low-income families have affordable housing. Same difference. So yeah, I'm always trying to be thinking like that. How can I help the people that I serve, okay, overcome adversity and create amazing things like that in the world? Okay, I even want to do that too. And if you hire and let me know, I'll send you my resume. Okay. Every opportunity we have to look at, everything, and weigh it up on the scale and see, hey, how it weighs up. How can it not just benefit me, but benefit the collective? If other people thought about that instead of what is in it for me, what's in it for the collective? And when you raise other people up, you win, they win. That's a win-win. Okay, I'll take that. So, did anybody else have any comments or anything, or questions? I don't see anything at this moment, but please continue.
Margaret, I'm going to tell you why I have a black name. I told you I would tell you live. so, so my parents moved to the United States, to Oklahoma, in the late '70s. They came to Oklahoma. They had nothing. They worked at a restaurant. My dad worked as a janitor at the public library, and my mom worked. She cleaned homes and things like that. Anyway, so they were in Oklahoma in the late '70s, and there were not that many Asian people there. So they didn't really speak English. They came over to learn, and so they had to work 3 jobs to pay for their MBA at the time. So when I was born in '91. They thought, I love them dearly for this, but they thought that for their first American born child, they want to have the most American name they can possibly think of. So in the late '80s, the biggest band in the whole world was the Jackson 5. And so they didn't want me to be Michael. And so they thought, all right, we're going to name our first American born child Jermaine. So they didn't know Jermaine was a black name, but it's worked out really well for me, right? I don't know how it's affected, the reception of my resume and things like that, but I've been Jermaine for as long as I've known. So I've been Jermaine for 34 years. I've had a black name for 34 years. It's never been an issue, except for some occasional times where I'm picking up coffee at Starbucks and they're like, "Hey, Jermaine, your latte is ready." And I'll walk up and the guy would look at me weird because they're like, "Hey, you're not Jermaine." so, so that's it. That's why I have a black name. And I'm thinking now when I'm going to have a child soon in the next few years, I might want to name my child the most American thing that I can think of in this day and age. And the most American name in 2028 is going to be Jose. So I'm going to be Ken, Jermaine, and Jose in 3 generations,
Hi.
right? So it's going to be fun. But my future wife's got to approve this, though. So we'll see. Thanks, Joe.
Okay. Okay. Very good. So basically, this app, HeirLight, is basically a estate planning tool.
It is. It is a human way of having conversations and creating an estate.
And that's dignified, really. That is truly, truly dignified way to go. And because I'm in the same pickle right now, okay, I feel like, oh, I don't have to do it right now. I can wait a few more years. We never know. Okay.
Mm.
And then, because my daughter is not computer literate. Okay. So she wouldn't have a clue. That's why instead of having 3 bank accounts, I'm trying to whittle it down to 1. As I reconcile my finances, I'm going to just end up with 1 bank account. And somebody was talking on another live early, talking about how they had checks and some people had got their checkbook and took checks out and all. I don't want no checks. Okay, I don't want no paper checks, so you can't come back and you know what I'm saying? I don't need that. So we need to know how to start preparing. And basically, we should start preparing like in our 30s because there's a
Mhm.
lot of people just dying before. And it's better for you to decide where the things that you have accumulated over the course of your life rather than have somebody else to dictate, no, I'm going to take it and I'm going to do this with it. No, if I don't have anybody to leave my money to, I'll leave it to the Humane Society. I'll leave it to the Salvation Army. Okay? And I'll leave each family member $1. Okay?
And
I'm just
Margaret,
saying.
while you're at it, don't forget to do the advanced directive, sometimes called the healthcare directive, depends on what state you're in. Essentially, to tell the hospital if you can't make decisions about your own body, who can, right? You got to make sure you do that. Um, there's there's a lot of estate planning so complex. Even for my family, we have a very expensive lawyer because what we ended up doing is we got a trust done, right? And even with all of that, when my mom passed, it was a mess. It was she passed while she was overseas, so we had to go to the embassy, and it was so much. So I just can't imagine, a family who is dealing with that, the overwhelm of not only the things, but the emotions, the grief, as well as the legality of all of it. And I want to be clear, if you have a will, you still have to go through the probate, which is a court process, right? If you understand that, maybe you should just get a lawyer and get a trust, right? I can't really tell you what to do, but if you're even thinking about this, do look into it. I really think that rising tides raises all ships in this industry. The fact that only 70% Americans have a will is crazy to me. And whatever is out there right now isn't working, right? If 70% of people don't have it, whatever out there is not working. And so I'm just trying to offer a different way of doing it. So yeah, I'm pretty easily found. If you want to catch up with me after, you can always just find me. But yeah, right
I
before we
did.
jumped on live, I was on the phone with an attorney in New York and trying to get this done in the state of New York as well. So
See, the
so I've been
thing,
talking about this all day.
okay, so the thing that with your app is each state is different. So I'm sure that your app, one of the first things it's going to ask you is your zip code or what your location is, and that way it can direct you accordingly,
Hmm.
right? And then what is the cost of the system? Because I told you about that one movie. I'll remember what
Yeah,
it was.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
You know, so it's 179 to export everything. So you start for free, you type in everything, you format the entire three documents. So your will, your healthcare directive or your advance directives, and your durable power of attorney, which is basically who has access to your bank accounts and things like that, financial stuff, while you're alive but unable to make decisions. Who has access to those things? So three documents. Once you talk to my app and finish those three documents, then you're presented with the option to pay. If you're listening to this right now, I'm going to leave a link right here so you can get 50% off. But remember, I'm only unfortunately still in California uh, because I just got to go to every state and do this. So if you know an attorney in whichever state you live in who's in estate planning and is not going to spend an hour talking my ear off about how AI cannot replace attorneys, because I get a lot of that. I'd love to. I love to talk to an attorney that you know. I would I would pay them to review my legal stuff, the way I organize the information. Our thing is, as an app, we can't give you legal advice, no legal interpretation. All we are doing is using our AI to talk to you, and then we're organizing those information for you, right? That's all we're doing. And so you can tell me crazy things that you want to do in your will. I can't tell you it's a bad idea, even though you can probably Google it. We've had some really funny things happen in the app, but yeah, so that's what we're up to. If you are listening to this and you know an estate planning attorney who's relatively friendly and maybe not too expensive, since I am funding this startup on my own right now, it's coming out of my savings. Yeah, I'd be happy to connect. And let me just type in that link here as well.
while you're doing that, let me say this: a lot of lawyers is going to be intimidated by your program because they're going to feel like you're taking their jobs from them. Okay, I'm just being upfront. They're going to be threatened.
Yeah, I get that. Um, but I think most lawyers understand. Most lawyers actually make their money in trust and in administrating the trust. And in elderly law, they don't actually make much money in making a will because it's like a draft and kind of move on. A lot of younger lawyers will try to make a will because it's a gateway to eventually managing the trust and things like that. So yeah, I've referred more than 30 of my users to attorneys. It's something I'm not promising attorneys because I don't know how much of it I can do. But a lot of times when we talk to users, like when I do a one-on-one with user to understand their experience with the app, I tell them like, hey, you have a blended family with a child, from a previous marriage and things like that. I'd really talk to an attorney if I were you because there are complexities that the app cannot understand fully, right? We can do everything you tell us to do, but I'd love for another human who understand your state's law to talk to you. And so, yeah, I try to play nice. Sometimes attorneys are not always fun to talk to. Okay, here's the link.
Awesome. I had it wrong. Anyway, I thought it was AIR. I'm glad you did that. So
Yeah.
the question came to mind is: I know several celebrities, you know, famous celebrities that did not have a will. Okay, and some of those families. One of them is the guy from Good Times. Okay, not Good Times. Was it the one where the high rise. Okay. Anyway, when he died, the family remained in probate a long time. He
Hmm.
didn't have a will. Okay, and they couldn't bury him, and so they kept fight. The family kept fighting about the money. So I don't know if they ever came up with anything. Okay, because the people can be vicious once money involved, like Succession. Okay, it's about they going for the juggler. Okay, they said, no, this is my money. He never said
Yeah.
who was who. I don't know who in the end did he ever appointed that money. I don't know if you
Yeah.
ever said,
The
but
the one of the most famous people who died without a will is Prince.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, right.
And but we look back at history, there's Prince, there's Bob Marley, there's Jimi Hendrix, there's Tupac, there's Amy Winehouse. They all didn't have, Chadwick Boseman didn't have a will, right? We're talking someone who's young and technologically like, he has resources, right? They all have resources. Sometimes though, sometimes people they just don't want to deal with it. They just don't want to have to confront with another human. Who do I want to give stuff to, or what do I want to do? And they're like, you know what? When I'm gone, I'm not going to have to deal with it. So it is it is a personal choice. It's unfortunate, but it's a personal choice. So
I don't know if his sister ended up with the money or being the executor of this estate, but she's now dead too. So then, oh, also Aretha Franklin didn't have a will either, and so they said they found a napkin or something in the cover in between the couch.
mhm,
Okay, then you have to get a signature, a person that can analyze the signature to say whether it was her signature or not. Because think about it, you continue to practice somebody's signature for a long time. I don't know. So I don't know how that works. But I'm just saying that's more reason why we have to have our stuff in order. Because most people like, I don't give a damn. I'm gonna be dead anyway. But why have that attitude?
mhm.
Because the
Well,
money, the money
the,
you might want for a specific person might go to the wrong person. So you should decide where you want your money and possessions to go. That's my
I think
opinion.
I think a really selfish reason to have this conversation, a very very selfish reason, is if you kind of just think about it. If I sat down today and I wrote down everything I have and all the people I care about, right? Or if you want to go a little bit further, you write your own eulogy. How do you want to be remembered, right? If you just do that as a practice, you end up feeling so grounded because you know where you are today. And the unintended kind of feeling that you get from doing your estate plan is just the sense of clarity. I've been saying to all my uh, users, customers, and friends and podcasts and everywhere, I've been saying this, which is, we talk about this love language of gifting and words of affirmation and things like that. I think one of the love languages in the world is clarity, because clarity is love in practical form.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm up to. Um, oh, we've got a little audience here.
Yeah, right.
I
This is
wonder
this
I
is
wonder
this is
what's
stuff.
what if you're still listening, what's keeping you here? Give us some insights. Let us know what you want me to talk about. Let me see.
She's talking about donating organs. Yeah, that's another thing because when your body starts to shut down, I don't know if it's 24 hours or whatever you have to get those organs in the right place, because you got people on the donor list, okay? And those most people on the donor list are the ones with the money anyway, to even probably qualify, because you have to do all these tests ahead. Because like you have people, so for example, that die in a car crash. You got to get them to the hospital quick. Okay, do you have permission to even take their organs? Because on the driver's license they used to have on there, okay, yeah, I'm a organ donor, and you have the authority to take my organs. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add there except for you are given a lot of options. Some states have this in the health code, some have it in the probate code, but we're talking, what organs are available to donate and things like that. These are all choices that the HeirLight app will walk you through, because we're just going to ask you questions, and it's something that's kind of weird to talk about. Even for me to confront my own lawyer in last year to talk about this. They're like, "Well, do you want to give your organs to this thing for this?" And I know he's my attorney, but there's still a sense of judgment, right? There's like an ego. So I'm hoping that by putting it into an app that organizes these questions and into a legal document, that it helps people just not have to think about it. Just answer as truthfully as possible. It's between you and the app. You get to do it at your own time, and really think about it as well. And you can ask the app like, hey, what are common things people do? And we can't tell you what to do, but we can tell you, here are all the things that you get to choose from. Or if we have statistics on X amount of people do this and what's the consequences of that, we present it to you, but you get to decide on your own.
I just thought about another thing, like blood transfusions, for example. Back in the day, I had to have a blood transfusion a couple of times because I had fibroids. Okay. And so having all of your medical information in a automated system makes it easier to determine, okay, these are the things that she has, and these are the allergies and all of these things. And maybe it can link together. You know what I'm saying? Somehow, okay, this is her blood type, this is this, and she has this and this. Because once you find out, this person may not even though they have the organs available, those organs may be compromised and you can't use them. So you see what I'm saying? It's so many ways we can go down a rabbit hole on this. Okay, so yeah, you
Yeah,
can. All right.
definitely.
So Jermaine has put a link in his in the chat here, and his app is available only in California at the present time, and that includes, he said, a 50% discount for the app if you're interested. Okay, and I know that like companies like LegalZoom, for example, you can get a multitude of things from them. Okay, and that includes a will too. So you're competing with a lot of different other things. Okay, when you go into a business, when you plan on going into business, you want to look at the SWOT, your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. Okay, and that includes your competition.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can talk about that a little bit. So, if you're thinking about getting a will, the baseline is Google, right? You go in Google and you ask, hey Google, like estate plan near me, or how do I make a will online, or something like that. Google's free and it's pretty uncertain because you need a lot of guidance. And then you move up a little bit to like a LegalZoom or a Free Will, which is a free tool that you can make your will on, which is very good, by the way. If you don't want to pay, just use that. Um, and then it's going to ask you, LegalZoom and FreeWell, these tools are going to ask you a series of questions, about 60 questions or so, about everything, right? And the challenge there is, what we realize is people fill out the first 3 pages, and when we get to page 4 and they get to a difficult question, they stop. And so the completion rate of these tools are fairly low because not everyone's motivated enough to get it done in one setting. And then if you go up a little bit higher or lower, your other options are like ChatGPT, which is not great at drafting legal contracts. Not because it's bad at drafting, it's because it doesn't have all the context about who you are, the jurisdiction that matters to you, and all those things. And so if you use ChatGPT, I would advise against it because a generalist AI tool is horrible for contracts. And then you start going up the chain of, what else you can do with high certainty. You end up at a lawyer, right? But it's pricing a lot of people out, right? So in California, a simple will starts at $700, at least in Los Angeles, where everything's expensive. But then you start thinking about a trust, it starts at $2,000. And so I think for all of those reasons, we kind of sit in between LegalZoom and an attorney, where you're fairly certain of the outcome because it's contextual to who you are as a user, but without the price tag and the human interaction. And there is a cap to what we can do. And so we do have all these things that we put in our app where if you fit one of these criterias, and I'm not going to say it because then it would be legal interpretation, we actually block you from paying it because we didn't want to take on any users that we don't feel confident serving. And so until the day you pay us, I'm not, I haven't promised you to give you something. So that's the landscape. So LegalZoom is an alternative tool that is really good for some people. So is free will and trust and will. These players are all kind of pioneers of the space of making it easier. But the truth is, 70% of Americans still don't have one. And so that's what we're building for.
Absolutely. So your money don't end up in probate, and they can keep you in probate for how long? 10 years?
Yeah, with a will, you still go through probate, but the process will be clearer, easier, ideally.
Ideally. Yeah, right. Yeah, because your family member might come back and say, test this. They were not in their right mind when they signed this. Okay.
You know what's pretty interesting is that, right now we're building out the will and we're figuring out these social features, which is when will an executor get to see your will. And one thing that we realize is a lot of the users, they want to, even for the executors, they don't really want to show their will to the executors today. They want to have a future trigger where when something happens, then they'll give it to the executor. I feel like this is just such a human thing, right? Like there's so many things in our life that we think about, that we process and we dwell over, but we don't want to share it with even the people who are closest to us. So we're testing out a few ways of doing this. Of if you have an advance directive, a healthcare directive, when will people have access to that? And when
That's
can
an
they log?
important question. That's an
Exactly, right.
important question,
If
right?
someone is, when my mom is in a coma, if my dad wasn't there and he wasn't able to prove that my mom's husband and all that stuff, how do we make sure that our user get these documents? So we are working through a bunch of these options. Yeah, it's super exciting for me.
That's great.
If you guys have ideas, I'm happy to listen to any ideas and feedback about the app. We have a very long list of things that I want to. My best friend yesterday just told me that if he suddenly goes, he's my age, he's 34. He'd like for me to, actually, I shouldn't disclose everything because maybe he'll listen to this, but he would love for his the loved ones to receive gifts once in a while, right? And he's like, "Can you just build that service?" So, I
That's
mean,
beautiful.
it's like the "P.S. I Love You" movie. It's love letters coming every year or something like that. So we're exploring all these things to make the estate planning process more human, and that's what we're set out to do.
I love that. Now, let me ask you this question. I don't know what people do overseas, like in other different countries like Canada, France, and things like that, what type of systems they have set up, because, Substack is international. So right now you're just talking about, the United States, specifically California. But as you see this taking off, what do you envision about what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I have my hands full for the United States. We have 50 states. And districts of Columbus and things like that, Colombia, and Puerto Rico, all these places. I've got my hands full on the United States. Of course, if everything goes well, I'd love to help everybody. I think on the point of view of gaining clarity, humans everywhere are the same. We are better and feel more grounded and more content if we know where we stand today. When I first moved to Mexico a few years ago, I went out to Mexico for a year. I learned Spanish, and I realized that in Spanish there are two ways to say happy. One is feliz, which is like the act of happiness, like Feliz Navidad, Merry Christmas. And the other word that they use very often is contento, which is content. And I think as Americans, we don't think about content enough. I think there's such a focus on chasing more and getting more and accumulating more that we don't focus on content enough. And I think with HeirLight, the goal is to also, encourage end users to find where that line is. So yeah.
That's amazing. Now, I have this HeirLight.com, okay? And you said you were available on Apple and Google Store. This is the link to your 50%. I don't know if you want this to go out with the article or not. If
Sure.
you do,
Yeah.
Okay. And then that link will also take them to the site itself to purchase as well. So it
Mhm.
is a multi-purpose, right? That link.
Yeah.
I'll make sure to include that. Okay.
And
I should have it. Okay.
it
Go
is an
ahead.
app right it is an app right now, and we just built out a web version of it. So I'm really excited to be testing it out this few weeks, because we realize a lot of people like doing these serious life tasks on a desktop instead of an app. And so we're working on it.
That's great because people like to have both, desktop and the other one. So you can have, put it on your phone, or you put it on your uh or on your, iPad or whatever. So the other thing is, I had just thought about it, and then I forgot it. But anyway, um this is amazing, what we can do with AI these days. A lot of people say they don't like it, but deep down, a lot of people use it because, see, I'm a coach, and all the principles you're talking about is like coaching principles, to put this thing together. So, um, that's why getting feedback from people is very, very important. So you can make these necessary changes to keep all the updates and keep up with technology. Okay, because like I said, when I was a kid, we had the Jetsons, and like, wow. Okay, so it shows what we can do. You know, if we by thinking outside the box,
Mhm.
right?
It's exciting.
It is exciting times when we can create in the world, okay? And
Yep.
that's why we have these conversations, okay? So we can stay informed, okay? Does anybody have any questions or or any additional comments for Jermaine? Well, if not, then I want to thank you all very much for coming today. It's been very informative. Uh, Jermaine, I thank you so much. Do you have any final words of wisdom or some suggestions to the people here?
No, I'm just very grateful. Thanks for having me. I know we connected through Russell Nohelty. That's how we say his last name. Uh,
Okay, thank you.
great Substack, by the way, if you haven't seen it. Happy to list. Just great guy. So thanks for having me. I'm always grateful for anyone who wants to share the message and have a chat about this passionate topic that I have. So
It's been amazing. We have to keep in touch, okay? Like minds have to stick together, okay?
sure will.
All right. Thank you all
Thank
again.
you.
All right, take care. Bye bye.